Okay, today we will discuss about JDBC topic. What is actually JDBC? Before we go to any Spring Boot or Spring Embassy framework, right? They are using built-in framework, built-in support of JDBC template only. No matter how this framework is built, we have this pure JDBC concept there. Without knowing this about the JDBC, how this work, right? It is difficult to pin out all the issues that you have faced, that you are going to face in the project development. First, everyone has to understand this JDBC API. Whatever the framework it is, right? They use that Spring Data API or JDBC template or anything. They have a JDBC internally, it is implemented. That we cannot see that because that is a part of framework code. No one aware of that. There is a pure JDBC programs available nowadays. Freshers are coming like that. They are directly covering the core Java and then going to Spring Boot or Spring MVC and working on that Spring Data JPA something and just writing a queries to perform CRUD operations. If some issue occurs, some issue happens, right? And if there is a requirement to ask, write a simple queries, even they don't know that to write a simple queries using joins to tables. That is the problem, because if they worked on JDBC, then can't know how we can use this query and what is the difference between those types of queries. So that we have to learn this JDBC, understand the JDBC, how this works, what we have to do, where we have to apply this. Okay. Now let's start with this session. What actually JDBC? It stands for Java Database Connectivity. See here we have 4 letters. Yes, it is an abbreviation for JDBC, the Java Database Connectivity, which means this is one of the API used to connect to your databases and perform some actual queries. Means execute our SQL queries. Those SQL queries are written as SQL language. What is SQL? Is a structured query language. Make sure you have to write the query in structured language. Why actually you need a JDBC? What actually forget about the JDBC? It's what actually a database. It is a storage location where we are storing the actual data permanently, physically, so that it will be available for us any point of time and it will be accessible to us anytime. So that is why we have database. That underlying database are different types of databases are there. Oracle is there, Postgres is there, MySQL is there, MS SQL Server is there. And if you go to cloud, right, then they have MongoDB, MarianDB or NoSQL. There's so many DBs are there. All these are all databases only. All these are used to store our data only. The way we store data is dependent upon the environment. Cloud, if it is a cloud, NoSQL database is there. It is kind of different, like a key value pair of structurally map. And this database main is Oracle, Postgres, MySQL. All these are relational databases where we used to maintain tables with a number of columns depend on the requirement. Once we have a table ready, then we have to insert the records into the table. Then you can access the records, update the records, delete the records, or modify, do anything. Means you can completely perform the CRUD operations on that data where it stores. Means in simple, we can say database is a storage location used to store our data and will be available for whenever we need to access that. Okay, fine. How the data is stored, how the data is retrieving, who will help us to do all this stuff? There is an API that is also called as Java API. Okay, in this API, This package is separate java.io.sql.io. There is a package. That package contains all the related interfaces and classes that will help you to write the steps, what to perform to the database and what you are expecting to and from the database. It means this a JDBC API is a collection of classes and interfaces which helps the developer to connect to the SQL and to which database you are connecting, and that you have to decide based on the driver. Means if you know I'm using Oracle, I'm using MySQL, I'm using Postgres, and I'm using so on database. To which database, to which vendor specific database you are using, that driver you have to install. What is that driver? It is some jar. If you download the jar, that is a specific database, vendor database, then it will give you support to connect to from your Java application to the backend underlying database. Okay, it will not just do something magic. So to do that, you have to configure that. You have to load. You have to register the driver first. I want to interact. I want to communicate to a particular database. So you have to register that driver. Then you have to create a connection to that driver. So that driver will help you to do all this stuff and then so on, so on. There are some number of steps out there. So here, if you think that we have this picture. See, when you write a program and you want to submit the data to the backend system, right? From Java, you are sending the data. Right? In Java application, actually, you have to write all this stuff. And then you have to connect to the JDBC API. Here, like this JDBC API. This JDBC API, let's check the driver manager. Okay, who is going to handle my JDBC queries? And that driver manager is a particular different driver. Say it is Oracle or MySQL Server or MS SQL or JDBC or Postgres or MySQL, so on, so on. The driver manager decide that to which database I should connect that. So according to that, then our APIs, our queries will start interacting with that. Now, if we look at that, we have number of components are there to do all these things. Okay, these are all the components that we'll discuss step by step during hands-on that we'll cover in detail. Now let's see that how the connectivity is happening according to this. As I told you, first you have to register the driver. Once you register a driver, what is this driver? You are expecting, you are planning to connect to the particular database as shown in this figure. If you want to connect to the Oracle, then Oracle driver has to be registered is the first step. So this is what it is saying. So driver, so it's the interface that controls the communication with your database server. It manages the required set of all these JDBC drivers. All these are JDBC drivers only, but it is the vendor specific drivers. There is some small slight differences there when you specify that. It says something xyz.jdbc.driver or pqr.jdbc.driver. The only first part will be different from driver to driver, means vendor to vendor. All these call are JDBC drivers only. All this will help you to drive your queries to the underlying database. So once you register that, then the driver manager has to be successfully created. If something is not created, means the connection is not created, then possible exception is that you may not have the proper SQL driver, which means then you have not configured the right jar file. For example, there is some incompatible drivers also there. What is that? You are using some different version of the or database server, and you are loading the driver, which means jar file only. Then it is not compatible. Sometimes when you are trying to create a registering a driver, actually that jar file is not at all available. Means the driver itself is not available. So there is first step exception will come that. Once the driver is successful, then it will move to the next step to create a connection. right? It has to maintain the number of sessions to the connect, right, to your database, right? Means like not number of sessions like that. Once connection is established to your database, using that session, using that connection, you have to go forward with other statements. Make sure the connection should happen only once. If you keep creating the connection again and again, again and again, right, then you will get out of memory exception. What creating a connection means what? It is storing something, some object in the memory, right? If you keep creating connection every time, then you will get out of memory exception. Seriously, make sure you check. That's the best practice. You have to check the connection is there. Don't go to, and that you have to implement as a singleton design pattern that we'll discuss in the upcoming sessions. So that pattern will help you to create the connection once. If the connection is already created, means if the connection object is already available for us, then it simply return the connection object. It will not help go forward to create the connection again. Once the connection is available for you, then it start interacting to your database. So it has to create a statement, prepare statement, callable statement, and so on. Then number of statements are there depending on your requirement. Depend on the type of query we are going to execute in a database, and you have a methods to execute the queries, execute queries, right, and execute and update all those. And whenever you say update execute query, it will not return anything. You are just giving a command execute, means it will return the type of void, means you will not expect a return type. It means just execute and leave that. It will not return anything to you. That is called the execute query. There is one more query, say execute update, means you are saying execute update. Either you can insert a new record, or you update a new record, or you delete a new record. You are updating a database, which means then the return type will be expected. What is the count? What is the update statement it perform? Suppose you have deleted 4 or a number of records, n number of records. N can be 1, 2, 3, 10, whatever. Then execute update will give you a return of boolean true. It is updated. Means it is updated. Boolean. And then there is a result set. What is this result set? Once your query executed successfully, then the result, the data, the output data from the database stores in the result set object. It contains a set of data as a result by row by row. Then you have to iterate that result and then go ahead with your functionality. That is depending on your skills. If once you iterate the data, you can take it as a array list, or you can, if you want to use a custom object where employee have a records fetched from the database, employee ID name, etc. Then you populate to your employee position and then send to that some other place. Okay. Then finally, as a practice, you have to close the connection once you are done. What statements, what connections you are open, you have to close that. So this is how you have to write the steps to create a connection, to establish a connection to the database. Now, this, see, I explained you as brief about this, right? These are all the steps that you need to perform. How it looks like class.forName. This is the first step that you need to as told you right here, this you have to import the class. When you, every time when you are writing class.forName, from where this is coming? This is coming from the JDBC API, from java.sql. So then it will give you the right package. As we seen that during our core Java examples, right? Hands-on, when you say import, right, java.util.map, java.util. Set like that. Say from java.sql, then you are getting all these classes and interfaces. You have to import that package, right? If you are using IDE, then it will give you a suggestion to import the package from that API. Now, see, now this is the first step that you can create, class.forName. This class.forName, it loads the driver into the memory during runtime. Okay, I told you right, first step, you have to give the driver name. To which driver, what is the underlying database you are going to use that, right? You know that before you write the program, you have planned that, then this is the driver and database I'm going to use that. In our case, you just take that Oracle database. So then you see that syntax, oracle.jdbc.driver.oracle driver. You have to give this name, class dot for name. It means then it registers the driver for you. Means sorry, it loads the driver for you into the memory. Okay, then it is available for you. Okay, then from here, okay, then I will check during runtime when it try to load the driver. First it checks that, hey, this guy is asking me some, it is requested me to load this driver. To load that, it will expect this specific driver is already available in the class path. If it is there, then it will be quiet. Otherwise, it throw the exception, say driver not found. And then we'll see this after creating loading the driver, then you have to create a connection to the driver, which means we are giving instructions to say that please connect to that database. Right, in that Oracle database, you have n number of schemas created, right? Schema development, testing, and UAT, and production, so on, right? Like that, different environment where you have created different schemas. You have to tell that to which schema you are going to create a connection. That you have to tell the driver manager, hey guy, I want to make a connection. I want to establish a connection to a particular database. Then this driver manager, with the help of driver manager class get connection method, will help you to take the input parameters, and then it will search for the schema it is available or not. What is that? This is URL. URL is nothing but the syntax. You see, JDBC Oracle 10 is the name of the syntax, and the host where the database is created, and the port you get given, it can be anything. And this is the XE is nothing but a SID, or we can say schema name. Okay, database name. This can be XE, XYZ. It can say production, development, testing, validation, pre-validation, so on. This is how we create that. It should be an identifier to which database we have. So this is the URL. This URL should be formed like this. You cannot give something like that, like that. This is the standard JDBC Oracle 10. If it is MySQL, MySQL 10 like that. So depend on the vendor, this will be keep changing. And the second part will remain as is. At the rate, second part is remain be constant for all the databases. But this will keep changing the port number. In case of MySQL, it will be default 3306. If they want to change, they can change that. Every database comes with a default port. Then we have changed that according to our convenient port. Okay, this is the URL structure that you have to pass the URL then. And in that URL, okay, that's fine. And you have username password also there. What is the username password? Okay, you identify the username, but the input, the username password supplied is correct or not. Using these three things, then it will create a connection for you. If any one of the value is not correct, then it will not create a connection for you. It throws the exception that unable to create a connection. If this URL is correct, but unfortunately there is no XE database name with the name XE created, then first exception, it says that database name XE not found exception. Then the next exception, if this is fine, if it is identified, if it finds the XE database is already there, then next it checks username and password. If username itself is not there, then it checks username not found under the particular database XE. And if username is there and URL also correct, then it looks at the password. Yes, password is there, but it has to register with this username password combination. Otherwise, invalid username password exception means you have a username, but password is not correct. So like that, every step it checks that before create a connection. So this is how it take the parameters and validate the connection. Before it establishes a connection, it will check all these things. Once the connection is ready, then you have to go for the statements as we seen in the diagram, right? Then it create a statement. So we have established a connection, just creating a connection is fine? No. We have to work with that database, right? We have to write, we have to instruct something to database, right? Execute this query, right? So you have to create a statements using connection object only. You have to create, means you made a connection, okay? Using that connection, whichever the connection object you created, say that connection instance you take and then go ahead to create that. But it is something similar to our Java object. Now you have created an object for a Java class. Now with that, if you want to call the methods, which method you want to perform, right? Which functionality you are expecting from that class, then that object, that class object dot, then you are calling that specific method, make a call, receive a call, or drop a call, right? Send a message, anything, whatever it may be, right? In that, what type of functionality you are expecting, what type of operation you want to do, then you will call a particular method using that object. Same way, you create a connection to some particular database. You are going to create a statement, right? You have to create a statement to execute the query. Then you have to write this connection dot create statement. Then this return a statement object for you. That is correct. Have a statement, prepare statement, callable statements are there. So there are different types of statements are there. What is this prepare statements? This improve the application performance every time, right? It will not compile, it will compile the query only once, and it just take the parameters as dynamically. And this callable statement is also one of the statement that is extended from prepared statement interface, right? These callable statements used to invoke in our SQL functions, procedures in the database. You know, there are SQL functions and procedures are there. That if you look at this SQL functions and procedures, then you will get an idea that what SQL functions and procedures. This will help to invoke such functions and procedures, right? So these are all the sample queries that we are going to use. That result set, execute query, execute update, just execute patch. Then to close a connection, you see that connection done, close. So these are all the steps that are required minimum, right, to communicate to the database. Now we'll see this hands-on step by step. So there is no confusion. Okay, once again I will recap with simple steps. Java database connectivity. This JDBC is an API. It contains set of classes and interfaces, okay, to communicate to the underlying database. How it communicate to the underlying database is depend on the driver, right? What type of driver, sorry, what type database you are going to use, that you have to load the driver, create a connection, and then create a statement. Then you go with the execution of queries. Then at last you have to close the connection. So these are the basic things that you need to understand. Now let's start with the answer. Now we'll create a first simple thing. Okay. Now what we do, first we will write a simple class, okay? No need how to create a connection as we discussed. Now in this answer, I already have driver is loaded, okay? We'll reuse that possibly. First we'll write a program, simple program to write. What we call it as okay, it is a main program. Now, as we discussed, the first step is that have to know, let surround this with try and catch block, as we may get exceptions without knowing our issue. If any syntax area driver issues. Now, our first step is to load the driver. Then we can say class. So it is a class dot for name. So it say from where this is coming, this object class dot for name. See the syntax. Then what you want to say, you want to send the name of the driver. Already have this one. Okay, just copy this one. We don't have that much time. Okay, for MySQL, I'm using MySQL. Okay, driver. You see this com.mysql.jdbc.driver, and I told right this URL is the first part will be different, and second part is same local host, and I'm using development database, and username and password is this one. Now I am ready with the connection. What you did first, next step is to create a statement. So you see it is showing different thing. Okay, don't select such thing, just select the package java.sql. Now statement equals to, then using connection object I am going to create statements. Then what is the next step? We'll simply get the some data from the okay result set, and rs equals to statement dot create, sorry, say as execute query. We are going to execute query. Now what we do, I get the sysdate from Jewel. Now if we will check the connection is created or not. Okay, connection not equals to null. Okay, now connection is not null. Then what I say, established. Then what is the next step? I am going to iterate that result set dot next. If there is anything that data available in that result set, if yes, then it prints the date. What it is, what we are retrieving, dot get date. So one value we are fetching. See now what's happening now. I specified this incorrect data, and the new driver class it is saying this one. This automatically registered, and this unnecessary unknown sysdate in this field list. But you see, this is the first exception that we had. This works in the Oracle. And what is the difference here? Sysdate, select sysdate from dual, right? This will return the current date, but this is not the right syntax. Sysdate, I have to give the center. Now you see, it is return the current date. What's happening here? Then first it create a connection to the database. Okay, load the driver, create a connection, create a statement. Then I am executing a query, simple query to get the current date from the right database. What is the date from that particular database? This database can be hosted in different time zones, right? So according to that, you will retrieve the date. And then I'm checking if connection not null. Basically, this is not required. We can directly jump this one. Okay. RS holding the result, right? After executing this query, it holds some result. That result I'm going to display. This result contains one row and it's a one column only, right? One column only. And I'm going to print this. I'm printing here. So this is how we can make a connection simply. So these are the minimum basic step that to create a connection. That in that going forward, you create execute query. You can say you can directly create table also using prepared statement. Then table can be created and you can insert the records, you can select the records, you can delete the records, right? You can perform a number of operations. Okay, and then that's now we will end the session and we'll continue with the next session with where we perform all the CRUD operations step by step. Now we will stop up to here.